Okay, so in this video I want to make this add button functional. So if I click this button, a modal should appear through which we can add a new board. So let's do that. So this button is our navbar component. So let me open the sidebar and open up our navbar component, and here is our add board button. So what I want to do is create a separate component for this button. So let me cut this and create a new component, new file, and I am going to call it add board button. So let's create a template section here, and for now let's just paste that button and go to our navbar and let's import that component here. So we're going to say import, and we're going to import add board button. From, and it will be add/components, add/components /add board button.view. So now we can add this to our component properties. So let me copy this and create a property called components. So components, and inside that we're going to paste our add board component, add board button component. So now we'll be able to use it. Go Control V, like so. If we save this, the result is still the same. Now what I want to do is wrap this inside a span tag. So let me create a span tag. So Control X and create a span tag and paste it here. And I also want to create a modal component. So let me create a component called modal. So new file, modal.view. So inside that, let's create the template section. Here we are going to have a div with the class of modal. So div.modal should be modal, and inside that we are going to have a div with the class of content. For now here let's just say hello, and let's try to import that modal in our add button component. So we're going to have a script section. Inside the script section we're going to import our modal.view. So we're going to say import modal from, and this will be add/components /modal.view. So add/components /modal.view. So let's now add it to our components property. So we're going to say components equals to modal. Okay, now we can use the modal here. So we can say modal, like so. If we save it, here is our modal. So let's style it like a modal. So let me open up our CSS file, and here let's target our modal. So we're going to say .modal. The modal will have a position of fixed. So we're going to say position fixed. The top will be 0 and left will be 0. So let's say top 0, left 0, and the height will be 100 viewport height and the width will be 100 viewport width. So let's do that. And the background color should be a transparent black color. So we're going to say background color equals to RGBA000, and the opacity will be 0.5. So let me save it. So this is how our modal looks like, and here is our content. So let's style the content inside the modal. So we're going to say .modal .content. Let's say this should have a padding of 1 em. Let's try 1.5 em. And the background color will be white. So we're going to say background color equals to #FFF. If we save it, this is how our content looks like. We don't want this to span across the entire window. So let's say this should have a width of 100%. So width of 100, actually let's say 90%. Also let's make it centered. So in our modal we're going to say our modal to have a display of flex. So we're going to say display of flex, and we're going to say justify content to center and align items to center, like so. So now our content is in the center, but saying width equals to 90% would look okay in small screen, but for bigger screen the width is too much. So we're going to say the max width should be, let's say 300 pixel, or let's say 350 pixel. Now let's add some border radius to our modal. So we're going to say border radius, so border dash radius, let's try 5 pixel. and 5 pixel looks good. Let's also add a little bit of shadows so it will come out more. So let's say box shadow. Let's say 0 pixel from the x-axis, 2 pixel from the y-axis, 5 pixel for blur, and let's say the color should be RGBA 000 and the opacity should be 0.1, so 10% opacity. We save it. Now we have little bit of shadow. Okay, now we can also add a backdrop filter to our model, so we can say backdrop filter. And we're going to use the blur filter, and let's say 5 pixel of blur. So if we save it, as you can see, our background got blur, but our model is still on focus. So now inside our model component, let's add a title here, paragraph with the class of titles. So dot title, and here let's just say add new board, and let's style our title also. So again go to our CSS, and we're going to say dot content dot title. So dot content dot title. The title should have a font weight of bold and font size of 1.2 em. So if we save it, this is how our title looks like. After that, we're going to have a form. Inside the form, we're going to have some input. So we're going to say div with a class of form. Inside that, we're going to have a label. So we can say label. We don't need a for attribute. So the first label will say the title of board. So let's say board title. After that, we're going to have an input. So let's say input type will be text, and let me copy these 2 lines. So all shift down, and the second one will say board color. This is how they currently look like. So let's style them. So again go to our style sheet, and we're going to style our form. So let's say dot form, and the label inside the form, and we also want to target our input inside the form. So let's say form, and they should have a display of block, and let's say width of 100 pixels. So let's say width of 100%, sorry, so 100%, and we're also going to say box sizing to border box. So box sizing border box, like so. If we save it, now they spans across the entire width. So let's again target our form. So dot form, and let's add some margin on top and bottom. So let's say margin, and the top bottom let's say 1 em, and left right can be 0. So now we have this little gap, and now let's target our input. So we're going to say input, and let's say input should have some padding. So let's say padding of 0.5 em. That should be good enough. So if we save it, here is our input. Let's add some more. Let's increase the border radius. So we're going to say border radius to, let's try 3 pixel, and 3 pixel should be good enough. Let's also add some margin bottom. So we're going to say margin bottom up, let's try 0.5 em. Let's say 0.75 em. And now I want to have 2 buttons on this side. So let's go to our modal component, and here first I'm going to create a paragraph element that will have a class of text dash right. So class text dash right. Inside that we need to have 2 buttons. So we're going to say button, and they will have a class of btn, and the first one will have a class of cancel, and it will also say cancel. So here is our cancel button. Let's all shift down, copy this, and this one will say add, and inside that it will say submit. So here is our 2 buttons. So now let's style them in our CSS. So let's go to style.css, and let's see where we are defining the button. So here is our button. So let's target .btn.add. So let's say .btn.add, and this will have a background color. So background color of, let's say, primary blue. So dash dash primary dash color, and this should have a color of white. So let's say color of hashtag FFF, like so. Let's increase the padding. So let's say padding, and the top bottom let's say 0.75 em, and left right can be 1 em. Let's try that. So here is our submit button. Let's also target our cancel button. So all shift down, and here we're going to target our cancel button, and the cancel button will have some green color. So let's try green, and let's choose a different green color. Let's try this. Yeah, this should be good enough. Let's also add just a little bit of margin in our label. So let's go to our label, and here let's target our label. So label, and this should have a margin bottom. So margin bottom of, let's say, just 0.3 em, like so. Now we have a little bit of separation here. So now what I want to do is I want to use this modal to both add a new board and add a new item. So this title here should say add board for when adding board, and say add item when adding item. And the labels should also change, and the type of this input should also change, because in case of board color this should be an input type of color, and in case of priority this should be input type text. So we are going to take all of these as props. So let's do that. So inside the modal, let's create a script section. So let's say script. Inside that we're going to create a props, and we're going to take a lot of props. So we're going to take the title. So inside the array, let's say title. We're going to take the first label and the second label. So let's call it label A and label B. So let's say label A and label B. And we are also going to take the type of input B. So let's say input B type. So now instead of just saying title, we are going to use the title that was passed as prop. So we are going to say title. So now let's go to our add board button, and let's make it multi-line, so it will be better for readability. And here we are going to pass a title. So let's say title equals to add board. If we save it, okay, it looks like it's not working. Let's try to refresh. Let's see why it is not working. It should be title, like so. So now it says add board. So let's also say label A here. So we're going to say label A, and the second one will say label B. So now let's pass those labels as well. So we're going to say label A equals to board title, and also pass label B. So this should say board color, and this should be label B. So now it says board title and board color. Now we also need to pass the input type that we passed. So here we're calling it input type B. So let's copy that, Control C, and here instead of saying input type text, we're going to use data binding. So we're going to say dot type equals to whatever the user passes. So let's save it, and inside our add button we can say type equals to color. So we're going to say type, actually it should be input B type, and input B type will be color. So save it, and now our input B is a type of color, but it looks like the color is very narrow. So let's try to style it differently. So let's go to our style sheet. So here let's target our input type color. So we're going to say input that has its type of color. So type equals to, this should be color, and the color input, let's say the padding should, let me copy this padding, and for this one let's say the padding should be, the top bottom can be 0.1 em, so 0.1 em, and left right can be 0.5 em. So now we have a little bit more visible color, like so. Now what I want is the modal should only be appeared when the add button is clicked, and when the cancel button is clicked the modal should not be appeared. So we can also do that by using the conditional rendering. So let's go to our add button. So here we are going to create a data property, and it will be a function that returns an object. So function that returns an object, and here we are going to have a property called show modal. So show modal equals to false. So now let's copy this, Control C, and we can say v-if. So here we can say v-if and Control V. So show modal. So only if show modal is true, the modal will be shown. So if we save this, As you can see, now the modal is not visible. But if we were to say true, now we can see the modal. So now what we need to do is, if the add board button is clicked, we want to show the modal or make this show modal property to true. So how we can do that? So to do that, we're going to use what is called event handling. So normally in JavaScript, you could target this in JavaScript by saying something like document.querySelector.button and that add event listener click event. So we can do that in Vue JS as well, but we don't really use query selector unless we really have to. So instead of that, a better approach is saying v-on. So v-on, and then you can name your event. Then we can listen for the click event by saying click, and when it is clicked, we want to run a function. So let's say our function should be called handle click. So handle click. So now we have to create this function. So Control C this, copy this. So we create our functions inside the methods property. So let's create that. So we're going to say methods. Inside that, we're going to have an object of functions. So the function we named is handle click. So let's create that function. Control V. And for now, what this function will do is say this.showModal to true. So now if we save this, Control C, and then click on add modal, as you can see, it's the add modal, but the show modal property becomes true, and so we can see the modal. Okay, this was easy, but another thing we need to do is when the cancel button is clicked, we want to hide this modal. So we can add an event to our cancel button. So we can say when the cancel button is clicked, we can say this.showModal equals to false. But if we try to do this, you will realize that we don't have the add cancel button here. The cancel button is in the modal component. So how we are going to add event to this modal and make this.show false? Well, when we want to communicate from parent component, so in this case our parent component is add board button and our child component is modal. So if we want to add some data to our child component, we can pass them through props. So here we are passing props, so we are receiving them in our modal component, which is our child component. But what if we want to communicate from this child component to parent component? So our child component should pass some data to our parent component. How we can do that? So to do that, we are going to use custom events. So how we can do that? Let's see. So here is our button. So here is our cancel button. So let's add an event here. So we can say v-on :click, and instead of saying that, the shorthand syntax is saying add click, which will be same as saying v-on :click. So we're going to say add click, and let's say handle close button click. So handle close button click. So now let's create the method here. So copy this, and we're going to have a methods object here. So let's create that. So we're going to say methods. Inside that, we're going to have a function called handle close button click. And when we want to communicate from the child component to parent component, we emit events. So we're going to say this.emit $emit, and then the name of our event. So the name of our event here, we are saying close. So now when this button is clicked, our modal component will emit an event. So when a button is clicked, the click event is emitted. So we can, just like that, we can listen for our close event. So here we can say on. So we can say v-on, and we know instead of saying v-on, we can say at, and we are going to listen for the close event. So since we are emitting the close event in our modal component, so we can create a method called close modal, and that would say this.show equal to false, or we can simply say the show modal equals to false. This will also do the same. So we can make it simpler here also. So let me delete this function here also, and we can say add click. So add click, it will simply say show modal equals to true. So show modal equals to true, like so. So now if we click this button, we see this modal, and if we click on cancel, our modal is gone. So now we can communicate between parent to child and child to parent, and we also know how to do event handling. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to talk about global events, and we are going to make this modal functional. So if we click on submit, a new board will be added to our boards. So I'll see you in the next video.